Alright, so now on to the third part of this chapter. So here we're going to talk about bile, made by the liver. Then we're going to go into the gallbladder, and the small intestine, and the large intestine. So here, this is just talking about what bile has, what it includes. It's mostly made up of water, and then there are the bile salts in it. So this just mainly cholesterol. This helps to break down the fats. So that's what emulsify means, breaking up the fat molecules into smaller parts. It also has the bile pigments, the bilirubin, biliverdin. These are come from when the hemoglobin is broken down. And so then, again, cholesterol and electrolytes. The gallbladder is located at the bottom region of the liver. And so here, the main function of the gallbladder is to store and concentrate the bile. The cystic duct goes from the gallbladder and joins with the common hepatic duct. Then these two ducts form the common bile duct. And so we're going to learn about these in the lab. And the bile duct then takes the bile to the duodenum. And so here the bile duct is connecting along with the pancreatic duct through the hepatopancreatic ampulla. The gallstones, so sometimes what happens is too much cholesterol, too much calcium can lead to these crystals forming. And so sometimes these crystals can enlarge and form these stones. So some of the causes: excess bile concentration, too much cholesterol secretion, too much calcium could also be it, or inflammation. This hormone, the CCK or cholecystokinin, so we learned that the small intestine makes the CCK. And so what it says here, CCK is actually stimulating the gallbladder. So it says cause the gallbladder to contract, and CCK is released when it senses that there's fats. Like after you've eaten fatty foods going into the duodenum senses that, releases the CCK, and then cause the gallbladder to send out the bile. Then here the small intestine. It has these three parts. The duodenum is only that beginning part, only the C-shaped parts. Then the jejunum is the middle part, and the ileum is the last part. The ileum is the part that contains those Peyer's patches, those lymphatic tissue. The mesentery is just the connective tissue between our intestines, so it kind of helps to keep the intestines in place. And there are also a lot of blood vessels here, nerves. The blood vessels are the ones that are taking the nutrients that were absorbed by your digestive system. And so these contain those veins, like the superior mesenteric, inferior mesenteric veins run through here, gastric veins run through here. Then they're going to send the nutrients to the liver. Then the one on the right, this picture on the right, shows the greater omentum. This is connective tissue mixed in with fats. Now this one is covering the front of your intestines. And so we're going to be able to see this on the cadaver. The small intestine, just like the stomach, it has these finger-like projections. So these finger-like projections are called villi, or singular is villus. And so inside you have the blood vessels and also the lacteal. And so I also wrote here, lacteals are those lymphatic capillaries that absorb the fat from the food that you've eaten. And this is just showing one intestinal cell. So each cell has the microvilli. So these are the extensions that project on the surface of the cell. And so then these microvilli are creating more surface area for the absorption of nutrients. Secretion of the small intestine. So what we're going to see is the small intestine, can make those enzymes that can break down any kind of a nutrient. So we saw that with the pancreas. Pancreas also makes a lot of enzymes, but the small intestine also makes these enzymes. In addition to these enzymes being made, the small intestine also has these goblet cells. They release the mucus. And there are also these Brunner's glands that also release the mucus. Now, this table here is just a summary of the enzymes that we talked about. So we learned about the salivary amylase that breaks down carbohydrates, mainly starch, pepsin in the stomach for protein digestion, gastric lipase, this enzyme breaks down fats. So then we're seeing here the pancreatic enzymes, able to break down all kinds of molecules, but also the intestinal enzymes, many different ones. They can also break down all kinds of different molecules here. Movements of the small intestine, these we actually already learned about. We learned that the peristalsis moves the food down, and then segmentation is the one that breaks down the food into smaller parts. So it's the mixing one. Parasympathetic signals stimulate or increase these movements, but the sympathetic signals inhibit them. It's kind of interesting. If the small intestine becomes irritated, or think if a pathogen has entered the body and it's in the small intestine, a strong peristaltic movement occurs that sends that whatever you ate that has the bad stuff quickly into the large intestine and basically to get it out of the body. And so this then results in diarrhea. Ileocecal sphincter we're going to learn. This is the gate between the ileum, which is the last part of the small intestine. So it joins the small intestine to the large intestine. We're going to learn the cecum is the first part of the large intestine. Now here, the large intestine, its function is to absorb water and electrolytes. And so it can recycle the water, it can recycle some of the secretions, and then it's going to form the feces. So we're going to learn these parts. The cecum is the first part. This is where the appendix is attached. Then the colon, meaning the main part of the large intestine. We're going to learn the ascending part. Transverse colon goes kind of horizontally. The descending part, and then we're going to learn the sigmoid part. And then the rectum is the part where the feces is stored, and the anal canal is to get the feces out. Okay, so I will give you a much better picture of this, of the large intestine. We'll go over the parts. The gut bacteria, we have a mutualistic relationship with the bacteria living inside our body, so especially inside our intestines. So the good bacteria allow us to break down the food that we would not be able to break down on our own. So they help to digest fiber in our diet. They also make vitamins for us, vitamins B and K. And we've been learning recently that these gut bacteria, if you don't have them, if you don't have the certain kinds, it can actually lead to different mental disorders. Autism has been shown to be linked with these with the absence of the good bacteria. But so a lot of new research is being done to see if we can give those people the bacteria, the good bacteria that they need. The disorders of the large intestine. Yes, go over these, study these. So diverticulosis, here it says the weakening of the intestinal wall. Then this then leads to the protrusion of the membrane. And it forms these weird outpouchings. So here it forms these bulges that can become inflamed and infected. Inflammatory bowel disease, ulcerative colitis, the Crohn's disease. So both of these are affecting the intestines. Ulcerative colitis affects the mucosa and the submucosal layers, but the Crohn's disease says affects all the layers. So it's just much more painful here. Colorectal cancer, cancer of the large intestine or the rectum. Very interesting. It's actually the 4th common cancer in the US. But yeah, screening tests, regular testing help to find this in the early stages at least.